If you don't, you're gonna lose everything anyway. You got one enemy. We ain't the Walking Dead.
Oh! Ew! Dude! What the fuck?
What happened to The Walking Dead? It's a very simple question with a rather perplexing answer depending on who you ask. When we look back on the final couple seasons, it's hard to believe that this was the same show that was pulling over 17 million concurrent viewers at its peak. With a historic rise and fall, the journey was nothing short of a whirlwind. First hitting the small screen on Halloween night 2010, The Walking Dead had established itself as an incredibly promising program with a mountain of potential, gaining fans exponentially. It was fresh and exciting, undoubtedly offering a unique blend of drama and suspense that was yet to be achieved in the post-apocalyptic genre. The stark realism combined with the intense survivalist atmosphere immediately drew us into this dark and unforgiving landscape. Each season only improved in terms of quality and viewership, and by 2014, this show had become an absolute premium cable juggernaut, as it quickly surpassed the likes of Game of Thrones as the single most popular television series on the planet, holding a streak of 75 episodes that garnered over 10 million views. At this point, it was abundantly clear. AMC had captured lightning in a bottle. We were witnessing history in the making. The Walking Dead was on prominent pace to become the greatest television show of all time. Or so we thought. When it comes to any form of entertainment, especially a TV series, you simply can't keep it going forever. Characters and plot developments inevitably become stale, and changes need to be made. And in most cases with shows that overstay their welcome, these changes often feel like a contrived far cry from the glory days. This is something that The Walking Dead failed massively to conceptualize, falling victim to its own producers refusing to quit while they were ahead. As the years and seasons dragged on, the decline in quality became apparent. What was once the most popular show in the entire world had become a mere afterthought in mainstream television towards the end of its 12-year run. Never in my life had I seen a show with such illustrious highs and such egregious lows. So, after many years of subpar content that didn't live up to the good old days, I did what the majority of the fandom did. I made the conscious decision to stop watching The Walking Dead. But not for good. Let me explain. I began watching The Walking Dead on Netflix at the peak of its popularity, and I was hooked straight from the pilot. I absolutely burned through seasons 1 through 4 in a concerning stretch of binge watching and finished right on time to witness the season 5 premiere live, which amassed 17.9 million viewers. At the time, it was already my second favorite show, right behind AMC's other powerhouse in Breaking Bad. I was floored by the horror, the sets, the makeup and special effects, the writing, and above all else, the characters. The development that they had gone through over the course of the first 5 seasons was nothing short of spectacular. We became emotionally invested in their journeys, witnessing their growth and transformation as they grappled with the moral dilemmas and emotional toll of the apocalypse. We never knew who would perish or what devastating twist awaited us in the next episode. The show explored the human condition under extreme circumstances, raising questions about morality, leadership, and the lengths that our characters would go to in order to preserve their own humanity. It examined how individuals formed alliances, created surrogate families, and navigated the complexity of connection in a perilous landscape. It explored the prospect of redemption and the potential for personal growth in a world devoid of societal norms. During this time, The Walking Dead was at its absolute strongest. Believability is in the eye of the beholder, and the producers had accomplished something truly astounding. Not only was it believable, but it was relatable, even in such an implausible world. Everything about it worked. Until it didn't. Unfortunately, it's easy to overlook just how valuable the earlier seasons were due to the series beginning to experience a notable decline right around season 6, as it veered away from the elements that made it such a captivating series. As viewers, we witnessed a departure from the carefully crafted storytelling and character development that had initially enthralled us, giving way to narrative inconsistencies and pacing issues that disrupted the show's momentum. As the show progressed, a shift in focus became apparent, with an increasing emphasis on world building and expanding the scope of the story. A show that was once heavily focused on the quieter, more introspective moments that highlighted the complexities of the human condition was now tackling other themes that didn't quite stick the landing. Season 6 witnessed the show grappling with finding a balance between exploring the intricate dynamics of its characters and building a larger post-apocalyptic world with a new bad guy on the horizon. It eventually culminated in one of the most divisive moments in the show's history during the Season 6 finale, when the showrunners chose to end on a major cliffhanger. In this episode's final moments, the identity of Negan's victim was left unknown, generating a significant and rather misplaced anticipation for the following season. While cliffhangers are a common storytelling tool, the execution in this instance received considerable backlash. The decision to withhold the resolution robbed the season finale of its intended impact, leaving viewers feeling manipulated and unsatisfied. It was clear that The Walking Dead was losing its way. By the time Season 7 and 8 rolled around, the show had come into a massive downward spiral. Minor problems became major problems. Concerns that were once easy to look past were now glaring the audience in the face. At the risk of sounding crass, it all boiled down to one fateful issue during this time. The pacing sucked. The show seemed to lose its grip on maintaining a compelling narrative arc, with stretches of episodes focusing on isolated storylines that failed to drive the overarching plot forward. The excessive use of filler episodes resulted in a serious lack of momentum, diminishing the tension and urgency that had once defined The Walking Dead. Some characters seemed to be given minimal development, while others underwent abrupt and inconsistent changes in motivations and behavior. Many arcs seemed to be going in circles, and some shocking deaths felt less like meaningful plot threads and more like desperate attempts to regain the show's former glory. I understood the appeal of the fact that anyone could die at any given moment. After all, no one is safe in the apocalypse. But this got very tired when truly beloved characters kept getting killed off to the viewer's detriment, often doing far more harm than good. And one death in particular was unforgivable. The death of Carl Grimes. Regardless of your opinion on Carl, he was a character that everyone thought would be untouchable, even more so than the main protagonist of the show. He was supposed to be a crucial asset to the final seasons, so when it was revealed that he got bit, fans were absolutely outraged. It effectively removed a core element of the series, as most of the themes presented were centered around Rick and Carl's father-son dynamic. So once that was removed, what was left? It didn't take long for the audience to realize this. For the first time ever, The Walking Dead was losing viewers, and fast. It was at this point that I also stopped watching the show on a weekly basis and instead waited for the back half of Season 8 to come out on Netflix. I hadn't completely given up on it, but I was incredibly close. Unfortunately, the problems were only getting worse. During this time, the show had a major identity crisis, as the prioritization of constant redundant action sequences embodied something that was not the horror drama that the audience had come to love. What made The Walking Dead so memorable was the examination of how the characters responded to extreme circumstances and the moral dilemmas they faced in the struggle for survival. The stronger seasons posed thought-provoking questions about the lengths individuals would go to protect themselves and their loved ones, challenging viewers to examine their own ethical boundaries and contemplate the consequences of their choices. It was equally renowned for its exploration of relationships and the search for connection in a world where trust is scarce. Season 7 or 8 were just not this. It turned into an unreasonable action show, as the once terrifying walkers had now faded into the background, only being utilized as a subpar plot device or a cheap ploy to propel a shock value death. It was all-out war, human versus human, good versus bad. Hardly anything actually happened. Even despite the insurmountable hype for the conflict with Negan and the Saviors, it never managed to capture the incredible moments from the likes of the Governor in the prison arc or Gareth in Terminus. The prolonged battle with Negan became extremely repetitive and dragged out, lacking the dynamic and captivating storytelling that had characterized earlier seasons. Additionally, the resolution to this conflict felt rushed and unsatisfying, culminating in an incredibly anticlimactic Season 8 finale. It left viewers questioning the significance of the events leading up to it, in turn failing to provide a compelling payoff for the invested time and emotional energy of the audience. It felt empty and honestly kind of lazy. This show that I had once adored was quickly becoming more or less of a chore to sit through and watch, one that was riddled with head-scratching decisions and distasteful payoffs made by the creators. I just wasn't enjoying myself. I was on the brink of abandoning it altogether. And then came the nail in the coffin. Shortly after Season 8 concluded, an announcement was made that Andrew Lincoln would not return as Rick Grimes after a mere few episodes in Season 9. It was glaringly clear that I, along with so many others, had a decision to make, one that didn't take very long to settle. I thought to myself, what's keeping me still watching this mess if the main character isn't even going to be in it? Virtually nothing. After everything the producers have done over the past few years, did they do enough to earn my view for yet another season? Probably not. Is it really worth it to keep going? And there it was. At that moment, I had made up my mind. I was not going to return to watch the new season of The Walking Dead. And I didn't. The new season aired, and I just couldn't bring myself to sit down on my couch and lock into it. Weeks and new episodes went by without the slightest urge to return. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. And still, nothing. I had effectively cut myself off from anything and everything related to The Walking Dead. I really didn't feel as though I was missing anything important. At that point in my life, I was heavily invested in other shows, movies, and games that managed to capture a level of joy that I hadn't experienced in a long time. After over 3 years of radio silence, I never felt better. Until one day, something changed. On a random afternoon as I was flipping through the channels on my TV, I stumbled across a commercial. And it wasn't just any commercial. It was the Season 11 Part 3 promo teaser for The Walking Dead. The final 8 episodes ever. My immediate first thought, along with so many others who stopped watching long ago, was, wow, this thing is still on TV? It was almost laughable that a drama of this magnitude was finally wrapping up with its 11th season. What was once a powerhouse with 17 million viewers had become an arduous watch that was barely pulling 1 million on a weekly basis. But then, my mind was overwhelmed with one single thought. And that thought was, how is it going to end? Evidently, this was enough to flip whatever switch I had turned off for the past few years back on. The switch that held my desire to continue this epically flagrant show. For whatever reason, I felt the need to watch more and finish it. It was almost as if I had fallen off the wagon. I was a recovering addict who relapsed, and The Walking Dead was my drug. And I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I started watching it again. The question at hand is, why? Why did I feel this way? Why, after all these years, did I suddenly care about a show that I previously thought was dead to me? Well, the answer is quite simple. I had officially fell victim to the sunk cost fallacy. The sunk cost fallacy is a cognitive bias that traps us into making decisions based on our past investments rather than evaluating the current value, even when abandonment would prove to be more beneficial. I wholly acknowledge the fact that this show hadn't been good for a very long time, but I still felt the need to finish it. I, along with millions of other viewers, had become imprisoned by our own loyalty. I had already put so much time and effort into this product, so now that the end was in sight, not watching it felt like a disservice to the characters that I had grown to love. So, I picked up right where I left off, opening up Netflix and pressing play on the Season 9 premiere. And to my surprise, I found myself enjoying it. The first few episodes felt like a breath of fresh air as I refamiliarized myself with this unforgiving world. The plot was engaging, the characters felt sensible, and the writing was much better all around. And when I reached what comes after, Rick Grimes' final episode, I was blown away. It was an incredible experience filled with blissful nostalgia. Through moments of introspection and self-reflection, we witnessed the pinnacle of Rick's journey, as he hallucinates a bunch of beloved characters from the previous seasons. These symbolic moments provided closure, allowing Rick to confront his demons, make peace with his choices, and find a sense of redemption, culminating in a poignant and satisfying resolution. It was shaping up to be an incredible send-off to one of the greatest protagonists in television history. It was poetic, and it was perfect. Until it wasn't. In the final moments of that same episode, it is revealed to the audience that Rick Grimes didn't actually die. He was instead safely airlifted away by Jadis and whatever unknown party she was with, taking him someplace far, far away. This left a bad taste in the audience's mouth for two reasons. Not only did it effectively nullify any profound emotion that the viewer may have had for the entirety of the episode up to that moment, but it left us yearning for the return of Rick Grimes for the remainder of the show's run. Instead of bringing his story to a definitive end, the idea that he was somewhere out there loomed large, as we waited intently for him to make his reappearance. It was kind of a slap in the face, an incredibly distracting one that often detracted from future story beats that otherwise could have been very productive. This feeling only grew stronger after every new episode I burned through. I got to a point where I was only watching the show to see how Rick Grimes would return and how his story would end. And the more I watched, the more the quality dropped. It was not only a far cry from its glory days, but it was just really, really bad. It went from an actual meaningful story to a TV show that was still going just for the sake of still going. This was never more clear in the penultimate episode of Season 9, The Calm Before, during the now infamous Pike scene. It was at this moment that I realized that The Walking Dead was stuck in a never-ending loop that would refuse to change its format. This loop consisted of the following. Good guys find a new settlement when bad guy is introduced. Bad guy kills off one or multiple beloved characters to really nail home that the bad guy is bad, kill some walkers, drag on the war between good guys and bad guy, kill some more walkers, and finally end the war in a rather ineffectual way. Wash, rinse, repeat. It was agonizingly formulaic, and still, I kept watching. I just couldn't find the strength to drop the show for good. This was the sunk cost fallacy in its purest form. That's not to say it didn't have its moments, because it did. Most notably Negan's bottle episode at the end of Season 10, which turned out to be one of the best episodes in the entire series. These mere glimpses of brilliance and the inevitable return of Rick Grimes were just enough to keep me going. I pushed through Season 10, and then a grueling Season 11. And still, no mention of Rick. As I inched my way towards the finish line, I was beginning to lose hope. It wasn't until the final minutes of the series finale, the last episode of The Walking Dead ever, did we finally see him again. And this is where things get exasperating. Because he didn't return in some heroic way like many fans expected, they instead use Andrew Lincoln and Denai Guerrera as cheap cameos in order to promote their upcoming spin-off show to continue their story. Yeah, you heard that right. AMC isn't done. The Walking Dead series finale wasn't a finale at all. After a painstaking 12-year run, they still refused to quit. By continuing the story, the producers completely missed on the chance to provide opportunity for reflection, depriving fans of the closure they had anticipated for over a decade. It was disappointing, unsatisfying, and left the same empty void that was prevalent in Rick Grimes' quote-unquote final episode. To make matters even worse, this wasn't the only spin-off in the works. Not even a year after the finale of The Walking Dead had aired, AMC has already returned with one of 3 new spin-offs.
You can't keep getting away with it!
Dead City is centered around Negan and Maggie in New York, Daryl Dixon will be getting his own show that takes place in France, and the aforementioned Rick and Michonne spin-off will revolve around the two trying to find each other once more. This push to expand the Walking Dead universe raises glaring questions about creative dilution, oversaturation, and the detriment to whatever integrity this story has left. While spin-offs can be an exciting way to explore new characters and narratives, the recent revelation feels like a desperate attempt to grab some more cash and bait longtime viewers into watching more of a dead franchise. So, the ultimate question remains. Does a franchise that has managed to pull the wool over my eyes on countless occasions deserve my attention for 3 whole new spin-offs? Most certainly not. Am I still going to watch them? Sadly enough, I probably will. When it comes down to brass tacks, the sunk cost fallacy has imprisoned me enough to the point where I feel the need to know how these characters' stories end, regardless of the level of quality. I fully acknowledge the fact that The Walking Dead is dead, and has been for a very long time. But honestly, that doesn't matter all that much to me. I can't help but give in. At this point, after so many years of ups and downs, I'd rather be let down by the ending, whenever that may be, than to not know how it ends. My expectations remain low, but in my mind, it'll all still be worth it even if I don't really enjoy it. And to anyone who is considering starting or finishing this absolute headache of a show, my best piece of advice to you would be to save yourself the trouble. Your time is valuable. Use it more wisely than I did, because the last thing you would ever want is to fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy.